Hello, everyone. We want to welcome you, and we're excited to have you join us today for the latest webinar of the Nightwatch Master Integrator Series. It's a webinar experience designed to level up your security knowledge and integration skills. My name is Amber Weeks, and I'm a Senior Account Executive here at Nightwatch. I've been in the industry now for a total of 17 years. 7 of that has been with Nightwatch. A few of you may have joined our webinars. For those of you that are new, you might be asking why we're doing that. And the reason being is that in today's fast evolving world, we believe that staying ahead in security requires expert insights, practical strategies, and real world solutions. We have designed this series to bring you helpful information, best practices, innovations, and acceptable tips to help you enhance your organization's security systems. So without further ado, get ready to learn, engage, and take your expertise to the next level. Let's dive in. Now, I would like to introduce you to my co-host. From Comm, please join me in welcoming Michael Diamond, Regional Sales Manager for North Central U.S.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks, Amber, for the time. A little bit about me. I've been in the industry with this manufacturer with Comm for about 3 years or so. I serve as the North Central Regional Sales Manager, as you mentioned. I have about coverage of 13 states here, just right in the center of the U.S. Previously to that, I worked for a couple of different integrators. I also worked on the United States Marshals program. And so I've been out in the field installing a myriad of different access control, fire, intercom, security products, and then also worked as a technical trainer for another manufacturer in the access control division. So happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, Michael. So next, we're going to dive into what is Comm, as some of you may be wondering.
Yeah, so a great opportunity. So before we get to the presentation, just a bit of background on Comm. Comm is a communications company that was started in 1971. It's headquartered originally in Salzburg, Austria, but Comm Americas has an office and headquarters in Newark, the New Jersey area, Mahwah, New Jersey, technically. But we're all over the United States and North America, and also in LATAM as well. And so we are truly an international company, and we are in, I should say, almost every country, because there are a couple that we don't sell to, and that's mostly because of some of the security guidance and guidelines around them. But as far as Comm, I'd like to share this presentation with you and then begin to walk through. I think at the top, what I'd like to stress to anybody who is interested in Comm or looking to understand more about what we are, we really believe in trusted communication. It's a tagline for the company and for the people who work for it. It's trusted communications always. I like to boil this down to the idea that communication is the basis of every relationship we have on Earth. If you can't communicate with someone, you can't have a relationship with them, or you only have a strained relationship that isn't as effective as it needs to be. What we believe in is that optimization of communication for our partners and their end users, and the ability to help and protect people as a main goal stay. And so what we do with our integrating partners, like we do with Nightwatch, is we work through a series of important steps with them. So we invest in them in the sense that we invest in education, we invest in our time, which is a resource that is finite, as we all know. We work with their end users and their technical department to strategize and to develop solutions. Sometimes the solutions take a shape and form that we don't really see at first, and that's why it's important to have our ears open and listen to what the customer's needs are. And so it's important to understand that many of the innovations that Comm has developed over the years have come from us sitting down with customers and their partners, their dealers, and trying to solve for X. It's really the best part of my job, is meeting with a customer and meeting with their partner and their dealer and saying, we have a challenge here. We don't know how to do this. How can we figure out how to do that within the constraints that we have, whether that be a technology constraint, whether that be a budgetary constraint, as many of us understand, or whether that be a time constraint. Maybe there's a capital program that's been given money by an external body, a governmental body, and you have to act soon enough to act on those available finances. Commend has that flexibility to do all of those things. And through that, we really educate our customers on how we work and how to communicate with us. I think it's super important to understand that everybody on Earth communicates a little bit differently. Everyone writes a little bit differently or listens a little bit differently. And so it's important to understand that we're not all on the same page until we get a chance to communicate. And then it's about execution. It's about taking a project from the board, whether it be a whiteboard or whether that be the drafting board, and getting it into position. And that means making sure that a partner like Nightwatch understands what needs to happen day of installation or during the project rollout, and then making sure that Commend executes its responsibility to deliver the parts and deliver the knowledge that partners would need to execute that plan. And then from there, it's about growth. And while there's no such thing as exponential growth all the time, it's important that we share with our customers the knowledge and the ability to grow as Commend grows and changes. Because one thing 50 plus years of business has shown us is that Commend is not stagnant. We're developing real-time solutions. We're developing in line with current technology needs. And we're really performing in a way that is beneficial to multiple vertical markets. So I'd like to now take you around really the Commend communication platform. It's a unified platform. And it's important to understand that this platform is something that can serve multiple different needs at the same time. So we believe in privacy and security by design. So what that means for you and for any customer is that it's important that we bring these unique services and we bring them and those products into an environment that is secure and it has an eye for security from the ground up. It's not an afterthought, it's a must when it comes from the manufacturer. So many traditional communication systems like intercom systems are built on an on-prem solution. And so that could be a standard server that sits in an IT room, or it could be a VM server that sits nearby on the network that serves up as a communication source for all of the devices working on the network. But Commend has the ability to work in a serverless environment as well. And so our technologies can work over a meshed or serverless solution. So everything plugged into similar switches that our devices can see one another on. And the idea is that these devices are going to be able to communicate based on that without having to have a server in charge. So it's important to understand too, of course, that the features on some of these are not available because it needs the push-pull from the server. But for certain customers and certain locations and examples, a serverless environment is perfectly acceptable. And it's also something that always can grow. So I think that's a key growth part to point out. We can take a system that has multiple door stations. Maybe it has an integrated PA. Maybe it has a couple of different types of stations inside to be able to page overhead. And they can grow that server up when they need to, and it could become a full on-prem solution, maybe because they want to integrate it with an access control system coming in. Or maybe they want to integrate it with a camera system that they're considering deploying. And so we can always step up from there. The platform is further developed by our Symphony Cloud solution. And so Symphony Cloud is our cloud solution for intercoms. And we can bridge from that on-premises server through simple software licensing. So that way your customers can utilize features of the intercom system via iOS or Android applications on their phone. And so these applications we'll get into a little bit deeper, but the idea is that we live in a mobile and flexible world. And we can't always be tied specifically to a device at a site. Sometimes we need to make sure that a security patrol can open up a gate remotely, but also identify who the person is at the gate and have a conversation with them before they open the door. Or it could be something as simple as in a multi-tenant structure where we don't necessarily want to put intercom devices inside the building's units, but we do want people to have the ability to get a call from the main level and then also acknowledge and open that door so that way their guests can come into the building. So the key point here is that the platform offers a myriad of options and solutions for what your customers have and what they're going to have in the future. So what makes up that platform? There's an awful lot of different hardware choices. And I think that it's key to understand that Commend isn't simply an intercom company. While we do work primarily through the intercom method, yes, but there's also other things that we connect to. We like to think of Commend as a total platform. And so that means if you need to communicate with other devices on the network, it's highly likely that the communication system you'd be putting in with Commend would be able to do that. And so we have fits for clean room stations. We have fits for oil and gas, high electrical sites. We have developed plans for NERC SIP compliancy in the utility space. So if you have customers there that work in that space, we certainly can fit those needs. We have everything from outdoor stations to outdoor columns. And so there's very popular help points that are available at major universities that want to be able to both allow people to get information from, say, a security desk or an information desk, but also serve as an emergency information point and help point if the customers need that as well. And so there's a myriad of options there just within the columns, as we have modular and then prefabricated options. We certainly have ADA compliant stations, not just from the aspect of how they're installed, but what uses that they have. We have ruggedized vandal resistant stations as well. And so if you're in a public place like a parking garage or perhaps a university, and it isn't about an emergency help point as much as it's about having intercom that might occasionally get a little bit of public use. I think that's probably the most fair way to say it. It's important to have a ruggedized IK8 impact resistant intercom. And then indoor and outdoor touchscreens, which is a mainstay now of what we sell. And so touchscreens that have different screen sizes that allow you the ability to take over and have complete control of what's on the screen. I'll talk a little bit more about that later as we get into some of the features of Commend. And then everything from that to a custom module. So we'd have the ability to take a module that has all the internal technology of our intercoms, and we can shrink it down to something smaller than a hockey puck. And we can give the customer the ability to create something custom. They can add a microphone to it. They could add a relay station to it. They could add a simple microphone to it as well, a camera. There's a lot of options there. And so we're seeing more and more customers look at modules because they need to have it fit in a specific space and area. As far as input-output relays, we make our own. And I think that's important to understand is we have the ability to interact with an access control system, lighting, et cetera, at site through a lot of different I/O modules that we have. Those are both networked and direct connect modules into our intercom units. It's also evident that we do public address, mass notification, and so that's important too. We do that from the PA side on both IP PA, so direct connect to network, no amplifier needed because the horn or speaker has its own internal one, or we do standard PA through amplifiers. So Commend we make our own amplifiers, anything from something as small as 25 watt all the way up to 250 and 500 watt amplifiers for larger spaces. And those amplifiers are network connected, and so you'd have the ability to page it directly to them from master stations that Commend can sell. Which is beneficial as well. So if you have customers, or perhaps you, if you're on the call and you are a customer with an older PA system that you'd really like the ability to sort of retrofit and get updated, Commend has a solution that'll likely work for your location. Telephony is important as well. So customers get their phones and phone systems from a lot of places. Our communication server has direct SIP dialing, so we'd have the ability to add a license to it and then trunk out from it into something like a Cisco phone system or a SIP dialing station to be able to do external calling. We also have a hardware device, which if you need to connect to a regular standard copper old school POTS telephone line, we can do that as well. Commend also integrates with Motorola radios. And so we'd have the ability to, especially if there's a university or perhaps there are sports teams that security or building security that uses Motorola radios, it's possible we could integrate with them and be able to get calls directly to them, say from a security center or a visitor center. And then we'll get into interfaces here in a couple of slides. We'll talk about that, what we interface to, just a selection of them. But Commend is about being a hub. And that means we have to be able to connect to our partners. So there's a lot of technological partners that Commend has. We have the ability to connect to theirs and try to lower the number of panes of glass that you might have to look at to get the information you need. Commend also integrates to automation systems. And so the Commend product is used in a lot of places that have PLC systems, so programmable logic controllers. And those programmable logical controllers also can come in different varieties. So generally speaking, we'd be able to talk to them depending upon the language that they use. We also have our own internal PLC software that customers can utilize for a little bit more simple functions. But that's sort of the breadth of what we do. And it's a big catalog, but that doesn't mean that you have to understand it all at once. What you do have to understand is that it's likely that if you have a challenge in this space, that Commend has a solution that can work for you and your customer site. As far as the lineup goes, this is just a sort of simple graphic prepared for us to show you the width of some of those devices look like. I won't go through every single one of them, but the idea being here is that depending upon what the direct need is and location, we're going to have a device that's going to be able to fit and have function. The only thing I don't see here is the ID8, and that's sort of a little bit newer of a device that's meant for a receptionist, meant for a security center. It's got an 8-inch landscape touchscreen and has the ability to have a gooseneck microphone, a handset. It's a beautiful unit. All of our touchscreen units can come in silver or black, so you have the option there as well. So when we talk about a Commend system, it can be made up of a lot of different things. And you're going to see here on this slide where we mention things like classic initiators or classic devices. And so what I mean by that are 4-wire analog or 2-wire digital stations. So it's important to understand, too, that Commend's in an environment where we're developing for SIP technology, which is the current signaling technology that and forward. Doesn't mean that we don't have IP devices as well. But what is important to understand is that in general, we can take older Commend hardware and we can move it forward to still operate and talk through new standards. So the folks in Austria a little while ago put together a sort of a daisy chain of devices, and they went all the way from an analog device made in 1971 and had it call the cloud. They took a 4-wire signaling device and were able to adapt it through a couple of different levels of technology. So those classic devices that we have in classic servers, and we're able to adapt that all the way up so they can call. And so I think it's important when we see something like this or see this technology in the field. Commend's not here to sell you a widget. I don't sell widgets. I sell solutions. And so we have customers who hang on to Commend hardware for 10 or 15 years because it works. And honestly, that's what you're looking for when it comes to an investment in hardware. You're going to make an investment, or your customer is, and it's important that they understand that they're not buying something that in 2 years, 3 years is just not functioning or is pale in comparison to what that same company has released now. And so I think that's sort of an important understanding of the perspective of Commend when we talk about development of devices. We develop things for the long term. It's why all of our hardware comes straight from the factory with a 5-year warranty. And it's also why you can buy an extended warranty through us for, I believe, up to 5 additional years. And so that's a long footprint for that device to be at site. I think we would all appreciate being able to know that you could go out and take a major purchase like a car and say, this car is going to be good for the next 10 years. That's what we're hoping, right? And so I think that's an important perspective that Commend puts on its development phases. So the graphic here is really about how we initiate calls and how we can take those classic initiations, the GE800 and IS200 servers, or GE300 that's here in that lower hex there. Those 2 older servers, the classic servers there, we have the ability to take those and have them talk back to newer servers. So S3, S6, which is the current Rev model. And then also we can take those older devices and we can have them through those digital devices, and we can have them talk through a product that's going to be hitting the market here very shortly called Virtuosis Link, which is a product we developed. It is a simple box that allows you to wire in those stations instead of needing a big, GE 800, GE 300 server in your rack. You can take that out and have those devices wired directly into Virtuosis. Then it becomes network, and you can take those old servers out. And the thing that's important to understand about the classic servers is that we have gotten away from physical cards, and we're all those cards are virtualized now. And so that makes for a better and a stronger piece of hardware and less fail points. And I think that that's pretty important and critical too. As we move forward to the front of this slide, we can talk about Comm PLC's ability to work with that PLC programming, work with in relays, and work with devices on the network. And so it has the ability then to talk back and forth and to initiate and make things happen, and then also take those commands and send those as events to other devices as necessary. And it's important too to understand that this is done in a secure fashion, right? And so it's important for everything that operates on the Command network to be secure. So we're not just pushing data out and around the network with no concern about where it goes or how it's initiated, right? And so that's pretty important as well. We can seamlessly integrate that classic hardware footprint that's out there into the newer Rev Symphony. It's important to understand when we come to open standards and interfaces and integrations that Command can offer quite a bit in this regard. We have the ability to integrate to a lot of different things. We have certain standards when it comes to our software and our hardware. And it's important to show how we can succeed in those spaces. So video integration at this point is sort of a must. And so it's important to understand that all those Command cameras put out an RTSP stream path, and they're also on VivS. So you'd be able to get a hold of that video and send it to most VMS systems. Some of the VMS systems have a better integration than others. It all really depends on that manufacturer. And then there are some camera systems that we just, in general, do a better integration with because those technology partners have spent the time. The ability to integrate audio as well. And so that's an important integration when you have audio that you need to push to specific spaces and places, or be able to get that audio that gets pulled into our devices and be able to hear that audio. That's important. So building management is another portion of what's out there, and that could be controlling lighting, that could be controlling water, like in the correction space. And so there's a lot of demands when it comes to the correction space on being able to control everything within a specific space, and make sure that lights get turned off at specific times, make sure that water gets turned off or on at specific times. We have all those abilities to be able to control that, or work with a system that's currently on site that is doing that through a Modbus integration. And then simple stuff, right? So public landlines or simple phone lines, right? Customer has a parking lot, and what they want is they want people to be able to, if they need to, hit a emergency or an information button and have that call out to a help desk that's in another part of the city, another part of the campus. Very basic function, but it's important that we have it. And then anything from SIP telephones, analog phones, mobile telephones. So there are certain integrations that we can do with those third parties to be able to call those, make third-party SIP calls, third-party Teams integrations, because that's obviously part of what our lives are like in a more remote or work-from-home environment. Customers are going to want the ability to integrate with those. We do have some options for them. And then other things that are important. So building access is probably your next hit when you come to a new structure. You're going to first put up cameras because that's the bread and butter of what most people do, and then they put up access control. They want to be able to see people when they're on site, and they want to know who went in and who went out and when they did it and who has access. Because as we all know, or what we all should know, the days of janitors having key rings to everything on site is probably a bad idea because it's not as secure as it needs to be. So we have those functionalities as well. I'll get to our interface slide here just next. we have the ability to enunciate. So we talked about mass notification. So that could be through IPPA or through standard PA through command amplifiers. It could also be done through hitting relays and to be able to activate beacons. We had a customer in the Southwest. I won't name names, but they had a very difficult challenge, which was the production space that they had for their facility. No matter how much they air conditioned it, because of the way doors open, because of the ambient heat in the deep Arizona desert, it just gets hot. It's unavoidable, and people get exhausted. And so what they needed to do was come up with a solution where a employee could go to any terminal that we would put up, any touch screen, and just touch it once. And when they touched it once, it's touched for emergencies, and it initiates an automatic call to the SOC, and it activates a blue light beacon over the station that's on a pipe that goes up 10 or 12 feet. And so there is an audio, there is a visual alert, and then somebody is summoned for medical assistance. And it's all done with one touch. And it's super important to understand that flexibility, when you're talking about life safety, every single second that passes matters. And you have to have a solution, and there isn't any space in life safety for the excuse of, well, I guess we didn't implement the solution that we needed. And that's how we look at it. That's not to say that Command's hardware is considered NFPA or life safety or a rated fire device, because we leave that up to the folks who do fire devices. But it is something that we can use potentially in concert with what is already at site and what's going on. And so that there are some options out there for that as well. And then really any sort of sensor that would report back to a relay. So that could be a temperature sensor, that could be a water bug for a basement where flooding could occur. There's nothing worse than coming home to a basement full of water. So it's important to understand that we have that flexibility as well. And then beyond all that, if Command can't solve your problem or your solution or provide you with one, what we can do also is work with the technology provider you want to work with to come up with a customizable interface or solution that you need. And so most of the integrations that we have been done through partnership with those companies. And they start way back when an end user or a client says, hey, we need to be able to integrate with this. Can you do it? Now, it doesn't happen at the drop of a hat, but it does happen. And that's how those chains of events happen, where we get a call to action and we sit down with their developers and we say, okay, how do you communicate? And then we work on a joint integration. And so these are just some of them. I'm sure that some of you see hardware profiles and companies here that you know. I think that the idea here is that this should get your mind thinking, oh, yeah, I've heard of that company before. Oh, yeah, we have these cameras, or yeah, we use this for access control. And so there's a lot of flexibility and options here. So these are just some of the open standards that we work with. So SIP for SIP calling, Session Initiation Protocol, SNMP, SMTP for mail, OPC UA, different languages to be able to talk back and forth between computers. Obviously, OnViv, we talked about that earlier. MQTT is a new communication format that we are working on having our information sent back and forth. It's just a different way to do webhooks. It's a little bit more precise, and if memory serves correctly, it's a little less data that we have to send back and forth. So it happens faster, and the faster we can send data back and forth, the more responsive everything is. But really, what we're building towards is ultimate connectivity, and so that connectivity is going to allow us to use either existing two-wire devices with that Virtuosis link that I talked with, or with a partner like MVT FiBridge when we need to go into a site and we need to make sure that we can control the budgetary numbers, because as some of you on the call will likely know, spooling out hundreds, if not thousands of feet of copper wiring is not cheap. And so we have great partners that have come up with their own integrations and their own workarounds and their own solutions. And we've utilized them in anything from a commercial space to a correction space. And that's been super helpful at controlling budgetary numbers. And I think what's important here when we talk about it is what we want to deliver for the customer is that connectivity, so that they have the information that they need and that they can act on that information. Because honestly, you can't do something about a situation unless you know about it, right? And so that situational awareness is super important, not just at the edge, but also all throughout the building. And I think that's what Comm is really trying to build a greater design and plan for. That privacy and security by design and why you can trust it really is what builds us into when it comes to critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure is anything gas, water, power, anything that could be considered the need by the public, right? So we have to be able to secure those entry spaces. We have to work consistently and proactively when it comes to deterring threats, and we have to be able to show proper workflow, and we have to be able to work within the automations that are necessary, and then we have to integrate, right, to make sure that we understand what needs to happen, and that communication on site is secure, and that those who are operating at site are also in a good space and understand that situational awareness. So all of these physical security and logical security standards are sort of our playbook. This is what's important to us. This is what's important to the space and the people who work in it. Because when we talk about critical infrastructure, if we don't adhere to these guidelines and the customer has an issue, then they're going to have likely a governmental body that fines them. So some of the critical infrastructure fines can be up to $1 million. So they're big. You don't protect your power plant and you get caught on an audit letting people tailgate through where someone gets unfettered access to the interior of a building, you could be looking at a real hefty fine. So it's important to understand that that is the benchmark, right? So if that's the benchmark, how do we do that? We have to make sure that what we build also meets that standard. And so it's important to understand the way Comm develops things. So being ISO 27001 is super important. And so if you're not familiar with it, it's an international standard that provides really a framework for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving a ISMS, or the Information Security Management System, to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets, which is an absolute mouthful. But what's important about it is that you're working with a manufacturer at this point that understands that we have to have that information security, and we have to manage it, and we have to make sure that our product is secure before we sell it to you. And so getting certified is really important. And so having that ISO 27001 certification is something that we have pride in. It's important. We're also IEC 62443 certified as well. And what that has to do with is that it's really a series of international standards that are focused on cybersecurity and industrial automation and some control systems. And really it provides a framework for implementing security measures, robust ones, across a ton of different industries. What it means is that when we develop something, it is developed in a secure fashion, and it is something that also is monitored and audited. So I think that's the key. The auditing portion for our benefit is important. It means we conform to a specific standardized approach, and it also means that you can trust what you are buying from us. Because if you look at other manufacturers and you're like, oh, well, you don't have these certifications, why not? That's a good question to ask. If they don't do third-party pen testing for their servers, why not? Because some industries require it. Our customers and our partners have the ability to get the results from our penetration tests. So you can see a third party that goes in and tries to hack one of our servers. And that's important too. It's important to be TAA compliant. And it's also important that we comply with the National Defense and Authorization Act. I tell people that Comm is used by the federal government, and it's important. In high security places, they trust our devices. And I think that is really key. IEC 62443, in depth a little bit, is really a shared responsibility between who owns it, who integrates it, and who supplies it. So it's important to understand that we have to, as the product supplier, we have to be able to show that anything, whether it's an application, whether it's an embedded device at site, whether it's a network component, or the actual host devices itself, we have to be able to show that we conform to those standards. That also means that the integrator is required to meet standard as well. And so whether it's a system or a subsystem, or it's a software or hardware piece, you have to make sure that you understand how it's configured and you comply to standards. And then the asset owner, meaning the end user, also has to have policies and procedures in place governing those assets. And so they have to do their part. It isn't just a single person. And what this helps to get around is what some of you probably on the call have experienced or at least seen before in the industry, which is finger pointing. Something goes wrong, and then someone points a finger this way, left, and then someone points a finger this way, right, and go, I don't know what you're talking about. These other people were involved. I didn't have anything to do with that. It's to get away from that, because ultimately we are all responsible for that secure site. And it doesn't matter really whether it's NERC-CIP, although this obviously more applies to stringent standards, but it's also important to understand that it could be anywhere. It could be in the financial sector. It could be a life safety issue at a public university. It could be a lot of different ways. And it's important to understand that everyone shares a bit of responsibility here in how this gets done. And it's important to partner with a manufacturer that understands that and then also has been recognized that we have met that standard, right? It's one thing to know it, but what we are showing you is that we do and we understand it. So the Command Defense strategy is sort of four platforms. It comes down to device security. It comes down to making sure the software itself that runs at the device is secure. It's also important to understand that it involves data security. So the actual data packets that are pushed back and forth need to be secure. And then if we're going to run a cloud platform, we have to make sure that there's platform security as well. So the entirety of that circle is closed, and that only people that are allowed to operate in it are. And that's really sort of a little bit dovetailed on what's called zero trust. And so zero trust is something that's talked about in the marketplace of ideas today when it comes to security. And it's just really an approach, right? And it really assumes that no user, no device, or application gets trusted by default. Trust no one. Doesn't matter what it is, who they are. We always require some sort of authentication, some sort of login, some sort of credential that proves you are who you say you are. So we never trust. We always verify in these situations. If we give someone access, it is always the least amount of access until they prove themselves, right? And the idea here is to keep you and the people who interact with the site safe. So certainly you can jump online and you can read more about zero trust if you like. Getting to the cloud is important for a lot of different customers. This is sort of a fun graphic because of all the smiley faces. So Commend operates in the cloud in a couple of different fashions. It can do the Symphony mobile client, which is runnable on iOS or Android, but it doesn't matter whether it's a tablet or whether it's a phone. And we can access that also through the web client. So you can sit down with your laptop or your PC, and you can just go to the website and you could administrate the devices that your end users or the security access that they have on those devices. We can bridge that technology, as was mentioned previously, from sort of the classic hardware profile into Virtuosis, and then also then through the bridge that go out to the cloud devices. So the nice part about that is we could have a customer's location which has an on-prem server, has a myriad of devices at it, but they also need a device over here, or they need a remote location monitored. So it could be a substation, it could be a specific type of location that we would need help with. We'd have the ability to do that with cloud services. And the nice part about it is that we'd have the ability to keep it all under one hood, and we don't have to go to different platforms to do it. We also have a voice assistant, an intelligent voice assistant named Ivy. And so Ivy is something that we'd have the ability to potentially roll out to do wayfinding assistance. Ivy can help with directions. Ivy is a program, and it helps to. I think the important thing to remember about Ivy is it's a program that's meant to help your users, and so that could be anything from translating conversations, because Ivy can do transcripts on screen, so visual transcripts. So I can talk to Ivy on through, say, an OD10, a 10-inch touchscreen. I can talk back and forth to Ivy, and I can ask her for directions or where the bathroom is or what time it is or what the Metro rail schedule is, and she'll tell me. And if I need to also talk to her and say I'm a native Spanish speaker, I can walk up and I can approach Ivy and I can ask those questions in Spanish or in a myriad of other languages. And Ivy will carry on the conversation with me, but that transcript of the conversation will also be displayed on screen. And so, again, it's about giving the information in multiple ways. So we're giving it in a verbal sense, and we're also giving it in a visual sense. And so it's important that people be able to see the back and forth of the conversation. We have the ability to do all that device management from the cloud as well. And so we can control cloud users and the ability to access the system remotely. So if, for whatever reason, say in a multi-tenant situation, a tenant was moving out, and we wanted to ensure that they could not get back into the building, we could simply revoke access to the app that they have and be able to control access that way. And then we have the ability to integrate with other SIP phone systems. So SIPgate, Twilio, and then I've honestly never heard of PeoplePhone, but I'm sure it's real. But the point is that you'd have the ability to call out to some of those as well and get them integrated. The mobile client itself allows you to answer calls. It allows you to open gates. You can check on the camera when you're on the move too. This is critical for people who work in security, who need to let people into protected spaces when it comes to after hours. So it's something they can do potentially directly from their home. It could do something while they're out doing a security round, something like that. And then being able to display it too on the web client is important. So we can go directly in there and we can access it directly there.
So Michael, how does Comm's security communication technology enhance real-time situational awareness?
Yeah, so situational awareness, real-time situational awareness is pretty important. And so that could be anything from the Comm cameras that we have on devices, and it could be from the ability to have overhead conversations through PAs, the ability to send people at site information and questions. So that could be another portion of this. And so it's important to understand that any touchscreen really, or any television screen, can be utilized by the Comm system to be able to broadcast messages. So we could broadcast over PA, but we can also, with those modules, connect to televisions and broadcast a visual message as well, like inclement weather or active shooter, or something as simple as like a monthly calendar.
So I'm going to go ahead and just dive into this more. I know that we did touch on the fact briefly that they can be both cloud and on-premise. Can you touch on the advantages of each?
Yeah, a flexibility. So the biggest flexibility when it comes to that is let's take a customer that works in a metro area. They have an on-prem system, but let's say that they also have locations where customer or tenants, say, are going to use a building and those tenants come and go. But they don't want to necessarily have to put a footprint of a server there, and they don't want to necessarily have anything except a single device at the door that lets people in. So they could run Comm Intercom at the front door, and then they could also deploy that over the network or over the internet through Symphony Cloud, and then also deploy device licenses to phones. And so tenants can come and go, the building can stay secure, and they don't have to put a physical server in location.
So I'd say substantial cost savings.
Yes.
Which everybody can appreciate. I guess the last question I'm going to ask is, what are the key benefits of using Comm's Intercom over traditional communication methods?
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits is a commitment from the manufacturer to continue to improve the product. So last year, we rolled out our advanced noise cancellation, and we won the networking and communication award at ISC West for it. And one of the reasons why we won it is because we didn't charge anything. it's not another thing to bill or to have the customer pay for. It's completely free. As
That
long
makes
as you
sense.
have, hardware that it will function on. So that's sort of our newer MX line. Customers have the ability to go in and upgrade to that absolutely free. And I think what's important about that is a commitment from a manufacturer that understands that it has a premium product, but not everything is about money. It's about
Absolutely.
the overall user experience for us.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Start to conclude, I want to thank you all for joining today's webinar of the Night Watch Master Integrator series. Special thank you to Michael. I appreciate you joining and sharing some information with us all. Hoping people are not having too much of information overload right now. We also hope that everybody that was able to join this call or is watching this recording later found this session to be very informative and hopefully helpful for future decision making. And with that, thank you from all of us. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week and a great afternoon.